The first insult slipped out of Madison's mouth before she even thought about it. Ugh, could you not block the sidewalk with your little van? She snapped, stepping around the delivery man who was unloading boxes onto the curb. Her designer sunglasses slid down her nose as she gave him the kind of look she usually reserved for wrinkled clothes or cheap coffee. Some of us have places to be. The delivery man looked up, squinting against the morning sun. He was in his late 20s, maybe early 30s, with rolled-up sleeves, broad shoulders, and a sweat stain spreading across his gray uniform shirt. He had a clipboard in one hand and a box balanced on his knee. Sorry about that, he said evenly, his voice calm, not defensive. I'll move it in a sec, but Madison wasn't done. The last 24 hours had been a mess. Her credit card had been declined at brunch, her father had called her spoiled for the 100th time, and she was running late for a last-minute job interview she didn't even want to go to. The delivery man was just an easy target. Yeah, maybe hurry it up, she muttered, rolling her eyes as she strutted off, her heels clicking against the pavement. No wonder you're stuck in a job like this. The man's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Instead, he watched her walk away, her hair swinging, her posture dripping with entitlement, before going back to his work. Madison didn't give him another thought, not until the very next morning. She sat across a long mahogany table, nervously smoothing the front of her pencil skirt, rehearsing answers in her head about teamwork and long-term goals. This was the interview her dad had pushed her into. Time to learn responsibility, Madison, he had barked after cutting her allowance. She didn't even care about the job, she just needed to prove she could land it. The door opened, she glanced up. Her stomach dropped. Standing there, holding a sleek leather folder instead of a cardboard box, was the same man from yesterday, the delivery man, except not. He walked in with quiet authority, his stride confident. Gone was the uniform. He wore a sharp navy suit, tailored perfectly to his frame, his hair neatly styled. He looked every bit the professional Madison pretended to be. He sat down across from her, opened the folder, and looked at her resume. Good morning, Madison, he said smoothly, a knowing glint in his eyes. I'm Ryan Carter, hiring manager here at Hudson Company. We met yesterday. Didn't we? Madison's face burned. She tried to laugh, but it came out strained. Brittle, oh. Small world? She said, her voice shaking. Ryan leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers, his expression unreadable. Very small, he said, and in that instant, Madison realized the roles had flipped. Yesterday she had mocked him for being low-class. Today, he held her future in his hands. Madison's throat went dry. For the first time in her 22 years, she wished she could disappear. Her usual confidence, no arrogance, sputtered like a dying spark. Ryan Carter wasn't just the delivery man she mocked. He was the man who could decide whether she walked out with a job or walked out humiliated. Ryan didn't speak right away. He scanned her resume with cool focus, pen tapping lightly against the folder. Madison tried to steady her breathing, her mind racing. Does he remember everything I said? Did I really call him low-class? Oh God. I did. Finally, he looked up. So, Madison, he began, his tone professional but edged with something sharper. Tell me why you're interested in this position. Madison swallowed. She hadn't expected to actually want the job, but now? Now it felt like survival. Well, I've always admired Hudson Company, she said, forcing a smile. Your company is very respected in the marketing industry, and I feel my creativity could really. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Creativity? He interrupted. That's interesting. Your resume doesn't show much work experience at all. Heat rushed to her cheeks. I've been focused on school, she lied quickly. But I'm a fast learner. Ryan's expression didn't change. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. See, Madison, here's the thing. At Hudson Company, we care about how people treat others. Clients, coworkers, delivery drivers. His voice lingered on those last two words, her stomach clenched, he remembered. Every single word. Yesterday, Ryan continued calmly, I was wearing a uniform. Today I'm in a suit. But I'm the same man. Do you think a person's worth changes depending on their clothes? Madison opened her mouth, then closed it again. She'd never been asked something like that. Usually, people just laughed at her snide remarks, or let her have the last word, I didn't mean. She stammered. I was just having a bad day. Ryan's eyes narrowed slightly. We all have bad days. The difference is how we treat people when we think they can't do anything for us. His words cut deeper than she expected. Madison shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Look, she said, softening her voice, I was wrong, okay? I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. It was rude. Ryan studied her, as if weighing whether her words were genuine or just another act. He didn't respond immediately, and the silence stretched. Madison's heart thudded in her chest. For the first time, she wondered if her father was right, if she was spoiled, shallow, and entitled, but she wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Mr. Carter, she said carefully, I know I don't have much experience, and I messed up yesterday. But if you give me a chance, I'll prove I can do better. I want to do better. Ryan tilted his head, watching her closely. Then, almost imperceptibly, the corner of his mouth twitched. Interesting, he said. Ryan closed the folder with a deliberate snap. Madison flinched. You know what, Madison? He said, his tone still calm but cutting. I'll give you one chance. Not because I forgot yesterday, but because I want to see if you actually mean what you just said. Her breath caught. One chance? He leaned forward. Yes. A trial assignment. If you can handle it, maybe you deserve a spot here. If not, well, then at least you'll know where you stand. Madison nodded quickly. Yes, absolutely. I can do it. Ryan smirked slightly, as if amused by her eagerness. Good. Here's the assignment. Tomorrow morning, you'll shadow our operations team. That means early hours, no designer heels, no fancy coffee orders. You'll be helping with deliveries, scheduling routes, and carrying boxes. You'll see what it's like on the ground level of this company. Her jaw dropped. Deliveries? Yes. Deliveries, he repeated, unblinking. Consider it. Perspective training. But, she stopped herself, biting down on her protest. The old Madison would have scoffed, maybe even stormed out. But something in Ryan's steady gaze warned her that one wrong move and this opportunity would vanish. She forced a smile. Okay. I'll do it. Ryan nodded. Good. Be here at 6 a.m. sharp. If you're late, you're done. 6 a.m. Madison hadn't seen that hour in years, except when stumbling home from a party. Still, she swallowed her pride and said, I'll be here. As she stood to leave, Ryan added, Oh, and Madison? She turned back, hand still on the chair. He gave her a faint, knowing smile. We're something you don't mind getting dirty. The next morning, Madison's alarm blared at 5 a.m. She groaned, smacking the snooze button. Normally she'd roll over and sleep till noon. But Ryan's voice echoed in her head, 6 a.m. sharp. By 5:45, she was standing outside Hudson Company in sneakers, jeans, and a plain sweatshirt, clothes she hadn't worn since high school. No makeup, no blowout. She barely recognized herself in the reflection of the glass door. Inside, the warehouse buzzed with activity. Men and women in work gloves loaded boxes, checked clipboards, and shouted to each other across the floor. Madison froze, unsure where to start. Then a voice called out. You the new intern? She turned to see a tall woman in a neon safety vest. Yeah, Madison said. The woman grinned. Good. Grab those boxes and load them onto truck 2. Madison blinked. The boxes looked huge. Me? Unless there's another Madison standing behind you, the woman said dryly. With no choice, Madison bent down and tried to lift the first box. It barely budged. She huffed, adjusted her grip, and finally managed to stagger toward the truck, nearly tripping over her own sneakers. The workers chuckled, not unkindly. Careful, princess, one guy teased. Those boxes don't care about your manicure. Madison flushed but didn't snap back. Instead, she kept hauling, her arms burning, sweat prickling her forehead. By the time Ryan walked in, she was red-faced, hair sticking to her cheeks, struggling to shove the last box into the truck. He stopped, watching quietly. Then, with a small nod, he said, "Not bad." Something flickered in Madison's chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. By mid-morning, Madison's arms felt like spaghetti. She'd carried boxes, taped shipments, and run across the warehouse more times than she could count. Her back ached, her nails were chipped, and her hair looked like she'd been caught in a tornado. For once in her life, nobody cared what she looked like. "Hey, new girl," one of the drivers called. "Can you hand me that clipboard?" She nodded, rushing over. As she passed it to him, he smiled. "Thanks. You're holding up better than I expected." Madison blinked. It wasn't much, but it was the first genuine compliment she'd gotten in this place. Something about it made her stand a little taller. Ryan appeared then, clipboard in hand, watching her. "So," he said, "what do you think of delivery work?" Madison wiped her forehead with her sleeve. "It's harder than I thought. These people work their butts off." "Exactly," Ryan said. "And yesterday, you mocked a man who was just doing his job." She winced. "I know. I was awful." Ryan's tone softened. "You were honest just now. That's a start." He didn't smile, but his eyes held something. Approval, maybe? For reasons she couldn't explain, Madison found herself wanting more of it. At noon, the crew gathered in the break room. Madison walked in hesitantly, clutching a bottle of water. The tables were crowded, full of laughter and chatter. She felt out of place, like the new kid at school. Ryan sat at the corner table with a simple sandwich. When Madison started to sit near him, he held up a hand. "Not here," he said. Her stomach dropped. "What? Why not?" "Because you need to sit with them," he nodded toward the workers. "Not hide with me. Go learn something." Madison swallowed hard. Then, slowly, she crossed the room and sat at a table full of drivers and loaders. They stared at her for a beat, then went back to eating. "So?" she tried, awkwardly. "How long have you all been doing this?" One woman raised an eyebrow. "Why do you care?" "I don't know," Madison admitted. "I just want to understand." There was silence. Then a man with gray at his temples leaned in. 15 years, he said. "Started when I was 19. Put 2 kids through college with this job." Another added, 7 years for me. "Bought my first house last year." Madison listened, stunned. She had always thought of delivery jobs as bottom of the barrel. But here were people building lives, raising families, making something out of hard work. By the time lunch was over, she realized she'd barely touched her water. She'd been too busy listening. The day dragged on, but Madison kept at it. Every time she wanted to quit, she remembered Ryan's eyes on her, measuring, testing. And every time a worker shared a small joke or offered a tip, she felt herself belonging, just a little. At 5 o'clock, Ryan called her over. "You survived," he said simply. "Barely," she panted, brushing dust off her jeans. "You're tougher than you think." She gave him a tired grin. "So, did I pass?" Ryan studied her, then said, "Not yet. But you're learning." For once, Madison didn't roll her eyes or snap back. She just nodded. Because deep down, she wanted to keep learning. The second morning, Madison showed up 10 minutes early. No fancy outfit, no full face of makeup, just jeans, sneakers, and a ponytail. Ryan did a double take when he saw her waiting outside the warehouse. "You're early," he said flatly. Madison shrugged. "Figured I should be ready. I don't want to hold anyone up." Something flickered in Ryan's expression. He didn't say it, but the crew noticed too. Yesterday, she'd been a spoiled brat stumbling around. Today, she was trying, and it showed. She lifted boxes without complaining. She remembered names. She even cracked a joke at one of the loaders, making him laugh so hard he nearly dropped his clipboard. By mid-shift, the same woman who had been cold to her at lunch yesterday clapped her on the back. "Not bad, new girl. Not bad at all." Madison flushed with pride. From across the floor, Ryan was watching. He didn't interfere. He just watched. And though his face stayed serious, inside, something in him softened. That afternoon, while they loaded a truck together, Madison finally worked up the nerve to say what had been on her chest since the beginning. "Ryan?" she said quietly. He didn't look up. "What?" "I owe you an apology. Not just for that day, but for the way I see people. Or used to." She swallowed hard. "I was cruel, and you didn't deserve that." "None of you did." Ryan paused, leaning against the truck. His eyes searched hers, trying to read if she was just performing again, but this time, there was no mask. No attitude. Just sincerity. "You're right," he said slowly. "You were cruel." Madison's shoulders sagged, but, he added, a tiny smirk tugging at his mouth, "You've done more in 2 days than I expected you to. And that says something." Her eyes widened. "So, does that mean I'm forgiven?" Ryan crossed his arms, pretending to think. Then he gave a small nod. "Yeah. You're forgiven. For now." Madison grinned so wide it made him shake his head. For the first time since their disastrous first meeting, the air between them felt lighter. The crew finished up for the day, and Madison was exhausted but buzzing. As she grabbed her bag, Ryan called out, "Madison." She turned. "Yeah?" He studied her for a long moment. "Most people would have quit after yesterday. But you didn't." "I guess I wanted to prove something," she admitted. "Maybe you did," Ryan said. His voice was calm, but his eyes said more. She smiled, and for the first time, he didn't look away. Something was shifting between them, something neither of them was ready to name. By the end of her trial week, Madison was different. She no longer breezed past people without looking. She held doors open. She said thank you. She didn't roll her eyes when things didn't go her way, and Ryan noticed every bit of it. On the last day, he called her into his office. She walked in nervously, half expecting him to say she wasn't cut out for the job. Instead, he slid a folder across the desk. "Congratulations. You're hired." Her jaw dropped. "Wait, seriously?" Ryan smirked. "You earned it. You worked hard, you owned your mistakes, and you proved you can handle yourself. That's what we want here." Madison blinked back tears. For once, she wasn't thinking about the salary or the title. She was thinking about what it meant. "Thank you," she whispered. A week later, Madison found herself walking down a busy street after work when she saw an elderly woman struggling with heavy grocery bags. The old Madison might have kept walking, maybe even rolled her eyes. But now, she ran up and said, "Here, let me help you." The woman's face lit up in relief. "Oh, thank you, dear. My arms aren't what they used to be." Madison carried the bags all the way to the woman's apartment, chatting with her along the way. The woman squeezed her hand at the door. Not many young people would stop and help. "Bless you." Madison walked away with a smile, realizing the biggest change wasn't her job. It was her. That Friday, as she left the office, Ryan caught up with her at the door. "You've done well, Madison," he said simply. She grinned. "Guess the spoiled girl grew up, huh?" He chuckled. "Looks like it." Then his tone softened. "I'm glad I gave you that second chance." "I'm glad too," she admitted. You taught me something I'll never forget: never look down on people. You never know who they are, or what they've been through. Ryan gave a small nod, and for the first time, their smiles lingered a little longer than they needed to. Madison got her job. She earned her dignity. And she learned one of life's most important lessons: respect isn't about titles or money, it's about seeing people as human, and because of that, she finally started to see herself differently too. The end. My name is Temille Deebs. Please subscribe and make sure to click on the notification button to know when we upload a new video. Also like, share and comment your thoughts. Thank you, and I will see you in my next video.